So here are the handle materials that Cecil chose. Going with the red linen micarta over white liners. This is white G10 liner. It's 30 thousandths thick. And here's a little tip. For cutting micarta, it's fine to use your wood cutting bandsaw. But if you're cutting G10, either liner material or handle blank stuff, use your metal cutting bandsaw, because this uses fiberglass as a matrix, a fabric, and it's pretty abrasive, and it'll dull your wood cutting blade pretty quickly. So, and I learned that the hard and expensive way, but it doesn't really phase a metal cutting bandsaw. So that's my tip for the video. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the proper sizes and laminate these two pieces together to get some blanks, and then we'll start shaping them. Okay, I have the handle blanks laminated and just cut to a rough oversize, and I've already prepared the ends here. It's the only tricky part about doing handles on a knife that has a tapered tang and a guard, because this is no longer a 90-degree corner. So all I did was I mic'd here and I mic'd down here at the end and took the difference and divided it by 2, and that was the amount that I needed to elevate this end of the handle blank as I approached my sanding belt over there. My tool rest is nice and square to the platen. So what it amounted to, I forget the number now, but it was exactly 6 layers of this masking tape. So I just stuck them down on there and just approached it and squared the end up, and now I have a really nice tight fitting joint here now. And that's important. You don't want to see any gaps or anything. So we're ready to drill for these and get them glued on. So I'm going to be using my my clamping jig that I use when I build a knife of this style. I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, this is my clamping jig that I made. I know it looks kind of crudely fashioned, but after I welded this square tubing on the base, I put it over on the milling machine and I milled the bottoms of these to where they're parallel with this bottom plate. So it's something that I can trust. So what I use this for is any knife that has tapers and all that. The only 2 parallel surfaces on the knife are right here, this flat right here where the guards are, and that little bit that extends that 1/4 inch beyond the guard. So I'm clamped on that. So these holes, which were drilled before the tapers were there, are now again perpendicular to the center line of the knife, and therefore the drill bit will be perpendicular. So then the first thing I do is I'll put a blank on there, and I'll just make sure that it's butted up tight, clamp it, and then I'll drill down through with my 1/8 inch bit, and then I'll hit this 1/4 inch hole. Then I will clamp this in place. After I locate this with some pins to make sure it doesn't move, I flip everything over in this jig. I drill down through the other side, and that way I know I have good alignment on all my holes. Okay, I think I have you at a pretty good angle here to see everything. So I'm getting ready to go down through with my 1/8 inch bit, and then after I drill the 1/8 inch holes and everything's finished, I'm going to enlarge those holes with this number 30 bit to get that epoxy flow around the pins that we talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here, and I think this angle is good. Keeps my arm out of your face, and I don't have to watch the camera view and this at the same time. Alright, handle blanks are ready essentially to glue on. I have to make some more pins. These are just my temporary locator pins, and then I have to cut a piece of thong hole liner, and we'll get everything prepped up. We'll get the shanks of the pins scored, as well as the shank of the thong hole liner. and get everything cleaned off, get the tang scuffed with some score marks. Same with the underside of these scales, so the epoxy takes a good grip. And the next time you see the knife, it'll be back over in the rotary vise, getting glued up. And I always feel real good when I get to this point where I'm working with something other than metal on a knife. It just means you've rounded that home stretch sort of thing. And we're very close to completion, so I will see you guys very soon over at the rotary vise. Okay, well, this is a familiar sight in my shop. So I prepped everything, got some nice scores on the tang and on the mating surfaces on these handle blanks. Got my pins prepped up, so I'm getting ready to mix up some epoxy, and I'll show you some shots of attaching this thing, and then it just dries for about 18 hours, and then we can start shaping it. I want to see epoxy ooze out of that joint right there. Don't be afraid you're putting too much epoxy on. Just rolling in my fingers as I push them down, just to get that epoxy everywhere. Really don't want these handles to ever come off. There we go. Alright, I'm going to work my way down, get everything put in, get the clamps on, and I'll show it to you as it's going to be until everything cures. Okay, so there it is. About 18 hours from now, as I said, all of this will be cured, and we can take the clamps off, and then we can start finishing this knife. It'll happen pretty quickly after that. So I'm going to go ahead and produce what I have and get it uploaded, and we'll see you when we're taking this down to final finish.